Hello, all, and welcome to Murder at the Round Table. My name is Raf, and I'm joined today by my awesome co-host, Ipsha.
Hi.
Yeah, so as per usual, first off, how are we doing? How's life going?
I was gonna say this is actually our first episode of 2024. So,
Oh, yeah, right.
yeah, happy late New Year.
Yeah, I promise, guys, at some point we'll get to a normal recording schedule, but
It's not this year.
it's not this year. Yeah.
Do you have any resolutions?
Well, yeah, actually, I guess since it is the first recording of the year, other than the typical workout resolutions, not
Mm-hmm.
really. Figure some stuff out, maybe do one of those 5-year plan scenarios, because I keep saying I'm going to sit down and do it and then never get around to doing it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but interestingly enough, I was reading the other day that the first home buyer incentive was being discontinued soon, as of I think the end of March here in Canada, which is honestly quite a shame. There are other options if you're trying to like save up money and tax free and all that stuff for buying a home, but that was, in my opinion, a pretty good program because like at least the government was like matching what you were putting in and stuff, but then you have to pay it back later on. So I don't know. It depends really on the person.
Yeah, it's all a mess.
Yeah, yeah, and I keep thinking I'm probably gonna end up like renting for the rest of my life at this point, but we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. You never know.
Yeah. What about you? Resolutions? What's up?
I don't think I made a resolution. There are some things that I wanted to try.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly like makeup wise, I wanted to try some new colors for like mascara and eyeliner
Yeah.
instead of like the generic black. But I haven't got to that, but I did purchase a new car.
Oh yeah. Right.
So, yes, I actually got it yesterday and I have now car loans to pay off. So, this is like the first time I've ever had any sort of loans. So, I'm kind of like working towards like
Mm-hmm.
figuring out budgeting and my finances for a little bit, but I'm not going to be spending a lot of money as I used to, I guess.
Yeah, but then like we always say that. I remember when I first signed off on my student loans and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be like so good with my budget and I'm gonna make sure that like I pay this off in like astronomical times and stuff. And then
Mhm.
the problem with long-term loans is that you get stuck with it too. So
Right.
it's like, oh, wait. You like almost enter the sense of like being comfortable, especially if your credit score like is going up, because it's like, oh, you're paying something off. That you go back to the same habits and you got to keep reminding yourself, no, I can't spend that way anymore. That person is gone.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually set up a plan for myself, like my personal
Hmm.
plan. Two plans actually. One is more ambitious. They're both doable for sure. It's just I just picked up so much like habits and like really bad spending habits that I need to get rid of. I'm
Yeah.
actually really good with like if I put a certain amount in my spending account, like I'm not gonna touch it.
Hmm.
To me, every time I get that paycheck, I'm like, okay, this amount needs to go to my savings. Then whatever's left, it goes towards my loan and stuff. But obviously, the loan is new, so we'll see how much I'm left to spend on myself after, and that's what I need to be figuring out in the next few months.
All right, no, that's fair. Okay, so I guess we kind of did have a bit of a pre-segment
Yeah.
there, but a more official pre-segment for today will actually be a show recommendation. One that
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I didn't think about the last time that we did this kind of an episode, I guess related on hypnotism. So it's called Brain Games. You ever seen it?
No, no, I don't think so.
So I don't remember offhand what channel it was airing on, but I do know now it's on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this cool show that shows you like how your brain works through like episodes on like illusions, tricks, and explanations on like how you're processing things. So there were a few episodes I remember where like they would ask you to like focus on one
Mm-hmm.
thing while some like random shit was going on in the background, like like person in
Yeah.
like a gorilla suit or something was like moving in the background of like the same video that you were supposed to be focusing on something else.
Yeah.
And then they would like tell you, hey, these are all the things that you missed, and these are all the things that your brain kind of just tuned out because you told it to without realizing. So I thought I'd bring that up
Yeah.
only because it's going to be pretty prevalent, I think, or not prevalent, relevant, yeah, in today's episode.
Okay. I certainly have not seen it, but I'm considering actually, I don't have Disney Plus at the moment, but I'm considering getting it because it seems cheaper than
Hmm.
some of the other subscription places. I have to look into it, but it feels a little bit cheaper, so I do want to get it.
Yeah, and for the most part, I think quality of shows is worth it. So.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't been watching much. I actually, that's a lie. I've started watching Superstore
Hmm.
on Prime, and it's one of those things like if you want something to be playing in the background
Yeah.
and you just want to like a moment to relax at the end of the day, it's a perfect show for that. It's really funny. So I've been watching that, and then in between I've been also watching Chicago Med.
Oh, okay. Chicago Med, I haven't seen before, but Superstore, yes.
Superstore is good. And I think I started because like I was posting random stuff on my personal Instagram and there was this one particular clip that I posted. It's like, "Don't you hate Tuesdays, right?" And like the entire like ceiling like falls on that one person and I was like,
Hmm.
"You know what? Yeah, that's a Tuesday."
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, alrighty. So I guess just to start us off, a while back I did a hypnosis crimes episode, I guess. So if you guys haven't given it a listen, please go ahead. Don't necessarily need to pause this and jump over there kind of thing, but it does kind of continue from that episode. So in that last episode, we discussed the concept of crimes committed under hypnosis, and specifically, we focused on the case of George Giles de la Tourette and the Copenhagen hypnosis murders. And then at the time, you and I, as we were like discussing, I guess, whether or not it can happen, kind of came to that conclusion, kind of in line with like the prevailing ideals today on the topic, that a person can't be hypnotized against his or her will to do something that's also like against their values or morals. But
Yeah.
then we also counter that a person could be influenced under the context of their beliefs or manipulated using things
Mhm.
or people that matter to them to convince them to do something or like
Mhm.
to commit a crime, not just like to do anything. But yeah, one thing I had brought up at the beginning of the last episode, though, was that I'd mentioned that many hypnotic related crimes, or at least the ones that I kept coming across on, were related to like thievery and sexual assaults,
Mhm.
where hypnotists were the perpetrators and the subjects were the victims of the crime. So now what happens, in these cases? Like,
Mhm.
and to kind of get to the bottom of this, I thought we would run through two cases today, one related to sexual assault and one where the victims were robbed, and kind of see if, like, after we have that discussion, if at the end we still end up at the same, I guess, conclusion that we were at last time.
Fair enough.
So the two cases we're going to talk about is the case of the, I guess, hypnotic lawyer, Michael Fine, and then the case of the Hops and Pops hypnotism heist.
Both sound very intriguing.
Yeah, the trigger warning though, and as I guess I kind of indicated that be a discussion on sexual assault.
Yeah.
So, be forewarned, that is what we're going to be conversing about today. So, just jumping into it, like I've said before, I don't claim to know much about hypnosis in general. Last time I had given the definition that it would be defined as like entering this subconscious state where you're highly responsive to suggestion and direction. And
Mhm.
then, of course, typically it's used in therapy for recalling and processing traumatic events and suppressed memories. Now, regarding individuals under hypnosis being the victims of crimes, we kind of enter a different aspect of this topic, because instead of taking advantage of vulnerabilities or a person's morality or ethics to compel them to be the perpetrator of a crime, you are now manipulating them and taking advantage of them, making them the victim of your malicious actions. So this leads us to take a look at a more recent case
Yeah.
of a divorce lawyer, I guess, slash hypnotist, by the name of Michael Fine. So yeah, Michael Fine. Who is this guy? So he was an Ohio divorce attorney who is currently in jail for hypnotizing clients and taking advantage of them, as just, the baseline summary here. What I guess started all of this was there was a video recorded as part of a sting operation in November 2013 or 2014, depending on which article you read. There's like some contention on the year for some reason. So I'm thinking what happened is that the recording was done November 2013, and then, by the time everything was said and done, news outlets were maybe hearing about this in 2014.
Later in the year.
Yeah, and then that's why there's that weird contention on dates. Anyways, so where Michael Fine at the time put the woman into a trance, so this was now all in video, without her knowledge or consent, by saying it was just like a breathing exercise.
Like it was a client, like for divorce?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was a client that had come in to see him, and then he was like, oh, like,
Let's take some deep breaths. Yeah.
yeah, let's relax. So he started it off by using phrases and actions such as, encouraging the deep breath. And then, and I have this in quotations here, each time I say the word sleep, you're going to go deeper and deeper, 10 times deeper, 1, 2, 3, sleep, and then 1, 2, 3, sleep. Then the session moves to the couch. It becomes more sexual in nature. He's holding the client's hand. He says, like, emphasizing that every time he says like the word pleasure, you can't hold back, and this is in quotations, your entire body becomes a vessel of pleasure.
Okay.
He asks some, very inappropriate questions such as, when's the last time you made love? And like, honestly, I was reading the transcript from this and I'm just like,
whoa.
Bitch, you're my lawyer. Like, what is the point of this?
Well, yeah.
Well, okay. As in, like, yes, I obviously can see what he was doing, but like, I'm just like, I'm billing you right now to help me in this situation. Why does any of that have like any relation to this? And then he kind of keeps going, says some other things like, every time I touch you, it's going to be an incredible sensation. And then finishes off with like, at the count of 3, you won't be able to control yourself. And then all of that happens. And while, the client is in a trance, and then after a few minutes, Fine wakes her up, resumes talking like nothing happened. And
Right.
of course, this was now all on a sting operation. Like, this was all caught on video. So, at this point, the police come in and they get him, which kind of makes me wonder, like, what would have happened if he had done more? Would they have just kind of like jump in? I would hope so. Anyways, so that's kind of what brought to light, I guess, that he was doing this, or provided more concrete evidence of him doing this. The investigation, though, on him had began earlier in the year because 2 women separately came forward indicating that they had lost track of time and they couldn't remember like certain meetings or calls with Fine. One of these women was able to provide the police with 2 kind of like telephone conversations in which Fine had used like explicit sexual language, when they were supposed to be discussing legal matters.
Right. I'm kind of like curious, like what kind of was kind of the first time they were like, Kate, this is wrong, like the sexual language part. Or they're like, wait, these aren't like questions you should be asking me.
So from the way it was phrased, it seems like it started off first as like the losing time. And actually, I will get to that because there are more women that came forward, and I kind of put in like a collection or a summary of like all the stuff that they were noticing. But essentially, it started out with like noticing these like alarming small things going on, like the clothing being disheveled, or like the whole like losing track of time situation. And then now and again having conversations that were just outright sexual in nature. And it's like, wait, why are we all of a sudden talking about this?
Right.
So then that prompted one of the women to record those conversations and then send them to the authorities. But both her and somebody else had come forward being like, yeah, something is going on with this guy. So then as more women came forward, it was revealed that, he had hypnotized and forced at least 6 women to perform sexual acts between 2004 to 2013. So now the following is like a collection of statements that were given concerning their interactions with them. So like I mentioned before, one had, actually a few were leaving appointments realizing like, okay, that they had disheveled clothing, the losing track of time and calls and appointments. One woman indicated being wet in her vaginal area and that her bra was disheveled after she left his office or had any conversations with him. While another indicated that from the first to a few meetings later, she remembered him starting off by discussing like relaxation and such, and then after a while losing time. And there was one woman who provided just her first name, Melissa, who'd indicated how he would hold on to your shoulder and just in general appear to be there to protect you, giving you the impression like that, this was a guy that you could trust. He was here to like fight for you and stuff and, help you figure out your life. And because he specialized in divorce law, right? So if you're getting a lawyer to help you through that really difficult process, like you're going to be really vulnerable with them.
Right.
It looked like he was kind of taking advantage of that to put them in a state where they could be hypnotized. That seems to be the case. But yeah, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it feels like he definitely used these women in certain ways because they were like very vulnerable already. They're going there for divorce. That is huge. When you were saying like take deep breaths, I would assume like that those are normal things like lawyers would probably say to someone, especially if they're like overwhelmed. But when it came to like sleep, like you're gonna sleep when I tell you to sleep, like that kind of stuff. That was kind of like, well, I feel like those are terms that a lawyer might not use on their clients.
Yeah. So the loss of time, I think, was kind of what I found the most intriguing aspect about this case because so on the surface, like I guess losing time is something that is sensationally related to like hypnotism, I guess. Like when you hear about people being hypnotized, it's like almost like being like blacked out or something and then finding themselves somewhere else. And it got me thinking, like, okay, what if instead of, this was necessarily to do with hypnotism, it was more to do with dissociation more than anything else. And like, I couldn't blame anyone from dissociating like in the state. Like you need the guy, you're paying them, basically need them to get a handle of your life and how things are going to shape up for you and maybe even your kids. And then this happens. So what else do you do?
I also thought of like dissociation, but I was like, under what circumstance would you dissociate? Like you're having a good time, you don't disassociate, you just lose track of time. But like when you're working like under stress. So I'm kind of thinking like when you're talking to a divorce attorney, it is stressful, you have lots to worry about. Would you like lose track of time and dissociate like that? Probably not in certain ways.
I think when we say losing track of time here, I think it's more like you're almost it's like to protect yourself, your brain cuts off, that memory, at least until you're ready to process it. So it is a stressful situation, but like it's also someone taking advantage of you in that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking like when you're talking to a divorce lawyer or any person in general under these matters, wouldn't you like be alert a little bit, being like following, taking notes? I totally understand dissociating in those circumstances, but I'm also thinking like,
oh, I see.
I think I'm not really good at explaining what I'm trying to say, but like, when you go to a doctor's office, like, yes, you're probably going to zone out, but there's certain points where you're like making mental notes, right?
Like you're still like pretty present there.
Yeah, but I'm assuming like these women, when they say they kind of lost track of time, they kind of like gained consciousness or like they kind of snap back in and they're like, what happened the past 1.5 hours? I have no clue. And that kind of also is like a red flag in this situation.
As in like red flag in the sense like it's a sign like, hey, something just happened, or
Yeah, like something is wrong.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So timeline wise, yeah, so you had a total of 6 women who came forward who, alleged that Fine had hypnotized them and, had forced them to do this between the periods of, 2004 and 2013 or 2014, depending on honestly which article you read about it.
Mm-hmm.
The authorities helped one woman to conceal audio and video recording equipment before meeting up at Fine's office, and then that's where this
Mm-hmm.
all started because they finally got it in video and were able to arrest him. And then he surrendered his license in August of 2015 and has been barred from ever practicing in the US again. However,
Mm-hmm.
during his trials, he was still representing himself.
Okay.
And so now with the trial, and I guess like the consequences from this case, it was, pretty cut and dry in the sense that he was found guilty and rather, I guess, also pleaded guilty to 5 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of attempted kidnapping. And now he's serving 12 years behind bars as of November 2016. I should also make a point of indicating that I just said 5 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of attempted kidnapping. And the kidnapping part was really difficult for me to understand why it was indicated as that.
Right.
Or like, is there more to this? As in, like, there were other women who were kidnapped, or why kidnapping specifically? And I could not find that, honestly.
I'm just searching the Ohio Criminal Code. I was actually about to ask you, do you know why it was categorized as a kidnapping? But I'm also wondering if it was kidnapping because he kind of took hostage of them in a way.
Yeah, because he did, because it was about hypnotizing clients. So I guess, yes.
I do have the criminal code up. If you want me to read it, I could.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is the Ohio Laws and Administrative Rules, Ohio Revised Codes, Section 2905.01, kidnapping. It was in effect March 22nd, 2019. A, no person by force or threat or deception, or in the case of victims under the age of 13 or mentally incompetent by any means shall remove another from a place where the person is found or restrained the liberty of the other person for the following purpose. So 1, to hold for ransom or as a shield or hostage, to facilitate the commission of any felony or flight thereafter, to terrorize or to inflict serious physical harm on the victim or another, to engage in sexual activity as defined in Section 2907.01 of the Revised Code with the victim against the victim's will. So I think that's where it falls under. 5, to hinder, impede, or obstruct a function of the government or to force any actions or concession on the part of the governmental authority. 6, to hold in a condition of involuntary servitude. There's a B. Do you want me to read B as well?
No, I think the one that you'd indicated regarding sexual motivation is most likely the reason why.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if there's any other ones that may have fall under. Yeah, I think it's pretty much that one. I will probably link the site in the show notes, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be great, actually. I did not even think about looking at the Ohio court codes.
That's okay. Yeah, no, but like my first thought is like, why is it kidnapping? But this makes sense. There's also an authenticated PDF attached to the link on the website, so if anybody wants to look at that, that's also there.
In addition to, I guess, going to jail for the 12 years, so he was also ordered to pay 2.3 million to one of his victims of sexual assault. She won the lawsuit by alleging that he hypnotized her and made unwanted sexual advances during phone calls and in-person meetings. So I'm pretty sure this is the woman who had recorded those conversations. She was able to win. Unfortunately, most of the remaining women could not go forward to trial even when they were seeking it, partly because they had tried and it either got dismissed or they were worried about the judgment outcome.
Yeah, a lot of women, or just like victims in general, not just women, won't go on with the charges, carrying out like court matters because of that fear. And I can totally understand why that may be the case here, because the process of a court hearing, regardless of which part of the world it is in, it's very lengthy, it's time consuming, and court, when you have to, as a victim, time when you have to testify in court, it's not like a therapy session. You're being criticized and fingers are being pointed in all directions by everybody. So it's definitely not an easy process for anybody.
Exactly. And I'll finish up with one more point here because as it indicated, so these were all like in terms of consequences from the case for fine, but now consequences for the victims. So they had provided some impact statements that I was able to find. And one of his victims, this is a statement that she had brought forward during his sentencing in November of 2016, in which she discusses how Fine had manipulated her 3 weeks after her divorce was finalized. Quote, "I've come to realize it was not my vulnerability that caused this to happen." And then she goes on to discuss how she went to him to get out of an abusive situation and paid for his assistance, only to have him manipulate her trust, his position as her attorney, and vulnerabilities he learned to hurt her. Now this remains with her forever, while he has only received 12 years at the time. And another stated similarly how her life had changed so much because of this, and questioned whether or not 12 years was long enough to account for the pain caused.
Yeah, it doesn't seem long enough for sure.
Yeah, so this case is it's interesting because it points to hypnotism being used as a manipulation tactic, that can make people face or do anything, or not anything, sorry, or do things they do not want to, but by utilizing a mixture of like vulnerable state and power over the individual in the way of controlling, something they desire or just fundamentally require in their life.
100%.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think, I don't know, actually, I should be careful. I should not speculate as to why not.
I'm surprised like he wasn't charged with assault. Because I searched up Ohio Criminal Code hypnosis, and assault was the first thing that came up, their assault code. And I couldn't find anything that specified for hypnosis, but in certain ways they were assaulted, I think. And again, I'm not going to speculate, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised.
I was thinking about that because, yes, he went to prison. He went to prison for what he had done in a sense, but without the statement of sexual assault, even though there were 6 women who had indicated like, hey, had come forward and said that, hey, this is something that happened to them.
Right.
There was one thing that I had read but didn't fully understand at the time, which was about statutory limitations for some of the cases, I think, because the range was quite vast, right? Like 2004 to like 2013. So I think that played a role, and with only 1 or 2 women having like actually recorded of him trying to do something like that or having like that sexually inappropriate conversations with them, that probably is what made it difficult. But again, this is all speculation and total alleging, but yeah.
Okay, so another website, it says rape and sexual battery as an assault. Civil statutes of limitations of rape and sexual battery range between 1 or 2 years from the date of the alleged incident. And the criminal statute of limitations on rape and sexual battery is, quote, 25 years after commission, conspiracy, and complicity or attempt to commit the offense. So it says attempt to commit the offense. I wonder if he was initially charged and then he got off because it wasn't attempt to commit the offense and he actually did it. So he got off.
But that wasn't an attempt, but he actually did it.
Yeah. Again, speculations because I don't know Ohio law.
Yeah.
If anybody's from Ohio and they practice law,
yeah.
Please give us some insight.
Yeah, because this case was, it was kind of hard to understand some of the decisions made, but I guess maybe that also is kind of the point in indicating how justice goes so far, I guess, and there's a lot that needs to be corrected, or, a lot of blind spots, I guess, that need to be accounted for, but anyways.
The one that I just read off is from the Miranda Law Firm's website, and it's quite recent. It's October 2016. 2021.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to correct our assumptions or just want to give us, more detail about the law itself or this case, they're more than welcome to.
Yeah, please. I am open to criticism. We're just learning.
We're from Canada. We don't know about Ohio law.
Yeah,
That's a bigger reason why
the bigger point.
Yeah, more important point. So yeah, let us know why this is not assault. If you know anything about the case, whether he was initially charged with assault and then the charges were later dropped. It's like here, it happens where they're charged with multiple things and they plead guilty to one,
Mhm.
and their sentence can be negotiated, whether it's a lesser sentence because they pleaded to a different charge, stuff like that. So yeah, if this sounds like something that happened in the case, let us know.
Yeah, no, give us a heads up because yeah, I'd be curious to see a little bit more of how this develops, considering that the 12 years are technically almost up.
Oh, that's fair.
Our next case. We'll be discussing a case on thievery. This is going to be a really quick one, and it's a case of the Hops and Pops hypnotism heist. So this again starts with footage, and it's footage that apparently shows a man being hypnotized by a thief and into a trance and then being robbed. So on September 11th, 2014, in Highgate, North London, we find ourselves at a Hops and Pops shop run by Aftab Haider, who's 56 at the time. A man walks into the shop claiming his pregnant wife needs water. Mr. Haider is tapped on the stomach by this guy, and it's almost like he's demonstrating the baby bump, and appears to fall in a trance-like state. The thief dips into the shopkeeper's pockets, and then he runs off. The heist is strange, partly because of how short it is. I think it's about like 45 seconds. But also,
That was the only thing
that was it.
that he stole? Oh my god.
That's it. It was just money in this guy's pocket and then just disappeared. But also because the same crime has so far been allegedly reported in Nigeria, India, and Italy.
Oh.
Haven't really seen what this was referring to necessarily. Like, so the article that I was reading on this, the main one anyways, was talking about how like this has been prevalent in other places. There was one other case, it was pretty short, that I'd come across, Jakarta, where there was this, I think it was like this group of men who would like target tourists and I guess hypnotize them and then to then be able to take like their valuables and such. But I would lean more towards those being like con artists and just, you know, normal scams. So in this specific case, so Mr. Hader afterwards, you know, he comes to after the thief leaves, and as he says, in quote here, while he was touching me, he took all the money from my right hand side, which had my float money, and all the money from my left. And there was a witness outside, a friend of Mr. Hader, who was observing the situation, and he thought it was weird, but like maybe they knew each other because, you know, Mans is just touching his belly and all that, right? Just rubbing it up there. So
Like a friend.
yeah,
Yeah.
or a weird one at least. Anyways, so the current theory is that the man passed by a few days or weeks earlier and probably to assess his suggestibility, and he probably did it a few times. Curiously, the article that I'd mentioned, that I was reading, mentioned that though it's rare that this kind of case happens in the UK, apparently Italy has half a dozen crimes like this each year, which got me wondering as to what's going on in Italy.
Yeah. Well, if you think about hypnosis to be able to hypnotize someone, it takes a bit of skill, but that number really, in Italy, really throws it off. Like, what is happening? Does everybody know how to hypnotize there?
Apparently.
It's like a genetic thing. You're just born with that skill.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. So in addition, in this case, I think it was more about distraction. So what someone like says to you is very important, like to the action as well. One hypnotherapist I was interviewed for this pointed out that touching of the stomach meant that he didn't notice where he put his hands. They were in like his pocket or wherever else, like he wasn't focused on them. So like if somebody walked up to me and just like started telling me the story, and there have been some cases though, where I've just been walking down the street and some person just like starts getting really close in my business and smiling and talking and stuff.
Yeah.
And I have watched enough brain games, so y'all, you better watch brain games. It'll save you from this. To know, hey, I need to be able to see all of this person. What's going on with their hands? Where are those hands going? You know? Yeah. So they're still looking for the suspect, and to help with that, the police released the CCTV off of a nearby street, Archway Road specifically, in an attempt to try and track this guy down. They're still looking for him, so if anyone knows anything or has experienced a similar situation, totally bring it up. Also, just for funsies, if you want to let us know too, because I am so curious about situations like this, seeing more cases of it coming up. But I guess to kind of assist in the process, the suspect is described as approximately 30 to 35 years old, of Eastern European appearance, about 5'8", tall, slim build, with short black hair, wearing dark jeans, a gray polo shirt, black bomber jacket with small white writing on the back just below the collar. That's just what he was wearing at the time. And so, honestly, when looking at the thieving cases or robbing or scams closer, because I actually had a few other cases I wanted to discuss today, or some other more in-depth ones, but the more I went in them, the more I realized that these were more cases of fraud and scams and con artists.
Yeah.
So it was people skilled at using charisma or fear to intimidate, distract, or coerce subjects to give up their money. I'm inclined to believe that these cases need the individual to be susceptible to that request already in most cases. Either believe in the possibility of, either being hypnotized or whatever it is that the person is telling them, or just not paying too close attention. Not saying that that's necessarily what happened here, but rather those are kind of the more likely scenarios I would see, something like this happening, I guess.
Right. I was gonna say, because I had a question, so I'll start with that. Who said, who reported that the thief initially asked for water for their pregnant wife? It was that
So it was a shopkeeper. So
it was the shopkeeper.
When Mans walked in, he started telling him the story about his pregnant wife and all that, needing water and stuff, and got really up close and personal with him. And that's when he started demonstrating by touching the shopkeeper's belly or something. And then it just kind of went from there. The shopkeeper's hey, so then I just kind of came to, and he had taken all of my money.
Right. I don't know why, but this story, the heist one especially, you're kind of right about con artists, because I was listening to this podcast. It's totally off. It's nothing to do with hypnosis or anything. It was about this con man who called into several fast food chains across the United States and asked for an employee at the shop to be, well, first of all, he called and said that he was police or FBI or some sort, and asked that specific employee be strip searched by another employee, which is completely off. It has nothing to do with this, but one thing that I felt a key aspect was that nobody questioned the con person and neither the thief here, because they came in as a figure of authority.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the shopkeeper never questioned him, because he's yes, I have a pregnant wife. And when he got up close and personal, he at some point mentioned that he was a figure of authority, which kind of pretty much didn't allow the shopkeeper to stop the person from going into his pockets.
Oh, there might be something else that this guy had told him that kind of either freaked him out and just was holy shit, I can't do anything right now.
Yeah, and he either forgot to report it or was too embarrassed to report it.
Yeah, no, potentially.
And because you said it happened in multiple locations, I kind of went back to that, because that too happened in multiple locations and nobody questioned whether he was a figure of authority. And in this case, because it's a police officer, or whoever.
Yeah, it points to the, how do I call it? The construction vest syndrome or clause, I guess. No, I'll call it that. The construction vest clause, which is not a real thing, but it's just something I came up with to explain how if you see somebody in one of those reflective vests, you just kind of
yeah.
And I know it's not just construction workers who wear the vests, but if you see somebody in that vest, you just kind of listen to them. You just kind of do it.
Right.
And you don't question it, and nothing goes through your head being hey, maybe this guy is impersonating someone. And if somebody is like in front of me and has those questions directing traffic, I'm just gonna like start listening to them
Yeah.
even if the lights are pointing in the opposite direction.
No, there is actually a psychological study. It's Stanley Milgram's study that was also talked about in the scammer case that I just said with the strip search. But
Mm,
it's true that a lot of when you're like standing on the sidewalk and there's a person like wearing a suit and they look all businessy and they're all dressed up and they decide, you know what, even if the walk sign says to not to walk, I'm just gonna walk. There will be people that follow them
yeah.
because of the way they're dressed, and it's kind of like what you said with the vest, the construction vest, and it's true. Like you are more likely to listen to a figure of authority
Hmm.
and do what they say or follow what they do. So, yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, and I thought I would just put it out because if con artists are on the table, then this could be a type of con as
Yeah,
well.
agreed. And it would make sense if we now consider the theory of like he might have been prepped kind of thing. That does feel, I don't know, it feels questionable to me because it was a possibility put forward by like a hypnotherapist I was interviewed for this, but
100%.
it's like how much prep exactly would you have to give a person? Like would they have had to come into that shop like a few times in the last month or
Hmm.
just in the last year, just so that he sees him a few times or whatever? Like what exactly?
I'm gonna say like maybe a few times because people are often they go by a routine.
Hmm.
I assume the shopkeeper also had a routine, like when he takes money out of the float, when he closes shop. I think
Oh yeah,
those were like the little things that were picked up. He probably also picked up when the store is most empty and kind of like lined everything up. It's like, okay, the store is most empty at this time because it's closing. The shopkeeper takes money out of the float at this point, and there is a little gap for me to go in where the float is still in his pocket or still on him, and that's
yeah.
where I can do what I need to do. I don't think he would have to go in for like a lot, but maybe like a couple times in a month. And I think he would be able to pick up those time routines and whatnot.
And kind of go from there.
Yeah.
And again, this brings me back to Brain games because there were a lot of times where they covered these kind of scams
Mm-hmm.
where like how people would like approach you in the middle of the street or how they could slip their hands in your pocket and all that. Speaking of which, I'm going to Vegas soon, so maybe I should like prep for some weirdness because I've heard some pickpocketing scams can be kind of big sometimes for
Mm-hmm.
like against tourists. Anyways, all this to say, I am now trying to see if we can get like a proper hypnotist on an episode at some point because
That would be wonderful. We can definitely like go back into the episodes and being like, "Hey, what is your opinion on
yeah,
this?"
so like were we like totally way off base or like
Mm-hmm.
what advice can you give us with regards to all these different cases? They probably would have the most to say about the Copenhagen murders because that is to date the most famous case with regards to the use of hypnotism.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the movie one too, London After Midnight. I feel like there could
Yeah.
be a lot from there because London After Midnight is a good example of how media usage comes into play when it comes to people being attached to like characters. I want to say characters.
Hmm.
There was one recommendation that I told you that you could possibly do that you haven't looked at yet, but it is Slender Man. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
but the attachment to a character that may or
Mhm.
may not exist, I feel like we could get a lot of insight on how that works psychologically, but also in the perspective of, we could just also get in a psychologist.
Just straight up have a psychologist and be like, hey,
Because there is, in some studies, they do talk, like, learn, or I don't want to say learn, but sometimes, depending on who the professor is, they might go into
hmm
hypnosis and how that works.
hmm
So I feel like that is a connection that we could have.
mm.
Do you have anything to add, or should we talk about like our previous theories?
Oh, yeah, I got a conclusion.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So yeah, so I guess like in conclusion, so just like looking at these cases made me realize that many cases were straight up distractions, were scams.
Mm-hmm.
If any hypnosis was involved, it was for small amounts of cash, as indicated in the previous case. There was one story I was following up on where, and I was kind of excited for this one, where like a fraud cartel was targeting like elderly Asian women for like their life savings
Of course.
and like managed to get like almost 800,000. And I was like, whoa, because this
Mm-hmm.
was also on one site being indicated as like like a hypnotist cartel. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. But then delving into it more, it's like, no, it wasn't really hypnotism.
It was conning.
It was conning. Yeah, it was taking advantage of feelings or fears that the
Mm-hmm.
women had of their families,
Right.
or not of their families, but for their families, and being like, hey, like I'm gonna heal your family of these bad spirits. I'm gonna do this to protect them more than like any trance or any kind of hypnosis work, you know? And then in terms of sexual assault, manipulations of vulnerability or power was done to take advantage of a person's condition, self, etc. Sometimes the techniques they used, because there were like, other cases not mentioned today, they were trademarked as like hypnotist techniques used, but really it was assault. And the victim was put in a position where they, may have been dissociating more than anything. And in those cases, luckily
Mm-hmm.
most of them, they would come forward or disclose what would happen or like what had happened to people in their lives, and then that would lead to the crime being discovered, and then the perpetrator going to prison for it. But yeah, so I guess all to say that our conclusions from last time, like our conclusion still
Mm-hmm.
stands.
Pretty much. I also,
Yeah.
like, while you were talking, I was kind of thinking, like, maybe we are honestly kind of losing what the definition of hypnosis really is. And maybe we are saying certain things are being labeled as hypnosis to kind of undermine the seriousness of a crime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't have con artists before in this list, but now we
Hmm.
do. And even with the Michael Fine case, like,
Yeah.
obviously we talked about, yes, it's kidnapping, but why is assault not in here? And if it's because it's like under the category of hypnosis, well, what if hypnosis was removed? What if that term didn't exist? He would be charged with assault
Just straight up, yeah.
as well, in my understanding. Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, like, I know like media tends to have, like, especially a lot of reporters, or not reporters, like you see like
Hmm.
headlines and stuff, and there's always terms that are used very loosely. And
Like for sensationalism.
exactly. And then if you put hypnosis into something that hypnosis doesn't really exist, or maybe hypnosis definition doesn't really fit into that headline, it kind of undermines the actual
Hmm.
seriousness of whatever that headline is actually supposed to mean.
Of like what actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like thinking maybe that's also the case in certain hypnotic crimes that we might come across. And you did say that a lot of these are sexual assault related, so.
I'll be honest, I was hoping to come across more in-depth cases on this topic, and I think I am part of the problem because I was like trying to look for that like really juicy
Mm-hmm.
like story about all the amount of hypnotism that was used in this case for this and this and this and this, and but then only to realize, wait a minute, does this thing actually exist in the way that we imagine it does? And the conclusion is no.
Yeah, I think we're slowly starting to find that out. What I think would be interesting is like talking fully about the sexual assault matters is not something that you might want to do. And I'm not saying do it, but we can bring in those cases and just go
Hmm.
see what the charges are, and see how hypnosis is defined in those cases.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so like we can say, okay, this is sexual assault matter or whatever. We don't need to talk about it, but this is what the charges were. This is how the person was charged,
Hmm.
and see how they kind of fit in and how they describe hypnosis. I think we can probably get to like figuring out what we just talked about is like maybe media does not know what hypnosis actually is, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're probably gonna end up justifying that conclusion
Yeah.
there. So to, I guess, finally, like to close things off, I am considering making this a trilogy of
Do
sorts
it.
because there was a final look on this topic because we've looked at the perpetrators being the ones who are hypnotized. We have now looked at the victims being hypnotized, and maybe a bit longer of a look in those cases is needed, yeah. But now, the last section to look at is looking
Mm-hmm.
at cases where forensic hypnotism was used in court to assist victims in recalling details and trauma. This is another a sensationalized aspect of hypnotism because I remember seeing so many shows where, like, I think even a few episodes of like The Mentalist, for example, where the guy would like come in and they would use hypnotism, and subject would just would start like recalling like things that had happened, and just
Mm-hmm.
it saves the day. They know what happened and everything is resolved. So I was like, okay, well, let's actually look at that in real life. Like, how many cases out there have there been where, I guess, forensic hypnotism has been applied, and are there any notable like cases that we know of that we didn't even know? So that's what I think I'm gonna end up looking, and maybe at this point close a chapter on this afterwards. But it may also include a proper expert with more knowledge on the topic, or a research paper at least, to kind of get a better understanding
Mm-hmm.
on this topic, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to forensic hypnotism, because that is now more in line with like how it's used therapeutically too, for recalling events and such. But yeah, so what are your final thoughts and everything?
Well, yes, I agree that like we certainly have not changed our theories in any way. I'm excited about the forensic parts. I'm excited to see what you bring in. I'm definitely going to look into the Michael Fine case.
Hmm.
Probably listen to some podcasts or something like that because I kind of want to see if I can find more detail. I think podcasts, especially if they're someone from the States, they can explain the laws a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I might do that and see if I can find more information.
Okay, because actually, yeah, it would be nice to have like a Michael Fine, I guess. Not necessarily a follow up on him, but just in general, a follow up on that specific topic. Yeah, that would be good. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think that's it for me today on this.
That was really good. That was well done.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, y'all. Till next time. Please take some time to comment, like, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you're seeing this, and tune in for another session next time. We'll be back, y'all. Bye.
See you.